My name is Diana. Growing up, I was the princess of a castle I barely understood. My parents, bless their souls, had more money than some countries, but they made sure I knew the worth of every penny. Money talks, but wisdom listens, Dad would say, and Mom insisted on me knowing how to budget before I even knew how to properly spell luxury. Life was a fairy tale until it wasn't. At 12, their private jet crashed, and my fairy tale turned into a stark reality overnight. Grandma took me in. We lived in a modest house far removed from the opulence I was used to. It was a different kind of life, one where luxury was in the love and care, not the material. My inheritance was a distant promise, locked away until I turned 25. So, I adapted, learned, and thrived under Grandma's guidance. College was my escape and my grounding. That's where Alex came into the picture. He was as far from my world as one could get, a scholarship kid with a heart of gold and a wit that could cut through any pretense. We clicked, in a way I never expected. Bringing him home to meet Grandma was a nerve-wracking experience. I hadn't told him about the money. Better he doesn't know, not yet, Grandma had advised, and I saw the wisdom in her words. I wanted Alex to love me for me, not my bank account. Grandma, this is Alex. I introduced them, my stomach in knots. Nice to meet you, ma'am, Alex said, extending a hand that Grandma shook warmly. Sit, Grandma gestured, her eyes twinkling as she took in Alex's nervous posture. You're the young man who's stolen my granddaughter's heart. Alex blushed, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. I guess you could say that, ma'am. We sat down, and the conversation flowed more easily than I dared hope. Grandma shared stories of my parents, of me as a child, stories that made Alex laugh and look at me with a warmth that made my heart swell. You've got a good one here, Grandma said, nodding towards me but looking at Alex. Takes after her mother, strong and kind. But don't you let her fool you, she's got a bit of mischief in her too. I can see that, Alex chuckled, squeezing my hand under the table. The evening went on, filled with laughter and shared stories. Alex fit into our world like he was always meant to be there. As he helped Grandma with the dishes afterward, I knew I had made the right choice in bringing him into this part of my life. Walking him out later, Alex turned to me, a serious look on his face. Your grandma's amazing, you know? And hearing about your parents, your life. I feel like I understand you more. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. I'm glad, Alex. There's a lot to me, more than meets the eye, I guess. He smiled, pulling me into a hug. I'm here for all of it, every layer. Doesn't matter what's in your bank account. It's you I care about. I hugged him back, tighter than I ever had before. In that moment, I knew I could trust him, but I also knew the weight of the secret I was keeping. It was a delicate balance, one I hoped wouldn't tip and spill over. The ride to Alex's parents' house was a quiet one, filled with the kind of silence that's too thick to cut through. I could tell Alex was nervous, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. You sure you're ready for this? I asked, trying to break the ice. Yeah, just, my mom can be a bit much. Don't take anything she says to heart, okay? Alex's attempt at a reassuring smile didn't quite reach his eyes. The house loomed ahead, grand and imposing. As we pulled up, my stomach twisted into knots. This was it, no turning back now. We were barely through the door when Alex's mom, Gloria, made her entrance. Her eyes landed on me like two laser beams, sizing me up in a way that made my skin crawl. So, this is the girl you've been hiding, she said, her voice as cold as the marble floors. Mom, this is... Alex began, but Gloria waved him off. I know who she is. Come, let's sit. I prepared some tea. Her command was not to be ignored, leading us into a living room that felt more like a showroom. The tea was served, and Gloria wasted no time. I hear you were raised by your grandmother. Must have been quite the humble upbringing, she said, the word humble sounding more like an insult. I clenched my jaw, fighting to keep my cool. It was. My grandma taught me a lot about life. Important stuff, not just fluff. Gloria's lips twitched in a smirk. I see. And your parents? Gone too soon, I heard. Tragic, really. How does one cope without the proper guidance? Alex jumped in, clearly uncomfortable. Mom, that's enough. Let's not. No, it's okay, Alex. I interrupted, feeling a surge of defiance. Yeah, my folks are gone, and yeah, it was tough. But I got through it. Made me who I am. Gloria sipped her tea, her gaze never wavering. Interesting. And what about your future, dear? Any plans, or are you just riding along on my son's coattails? That stung. I took a deep breath, reminding myself why I was here. I've got plans. Big ones. And I don't need to ride on anyone's coattails to make them happen. The air was thick with tension. Alex, bless him, tried to change the subject. Mom, let's not do this, okay? We're here to enjoy each other's company. Gloria set down her teacup, a calculated move. I'm merely trying to understand the woman my son has chosen. You can't fault a mother for caring about her child's future. The back and forth felt endless, a verbal tug-of-war where no one was winning. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, Alex's sister, Lily, made her entrance. Her eyes were curious, but held an edge of judgment that matched her mother's. So, you're the famous girlfriend. Heard a lot about you. Not all good, I might add, Lily said, her voice dripping with disdain. I was about to snap back when Alex stood up. That's enough, both of you. We came here in good faith, to share a part of our lives with you. If that's not something you can respect, then maybe we should leave. The rest of the visit was awkward, to say the least. Conversations felt forced, every laugh a little too loud. But Alex held my hand under the table, a silent promise that we were in this together. As we left, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and frustration. I'm sorry about that, Alex said once we were in the car. They can be a bit intense. I sighed, watching the lights of the house fade in the rearview mirror. It's not your fault. But man, your mom and sister, they're something else. Alex chuckled, a sad sort of sound. Yeah, they are. But hey, we survived, right? Survived and stronger. I agreed, leaning my head against the window. The night sky was clear, the stars shining bright. Maybe it was a sign. No matter how tough things got, there'd always be a way through. The warning came swift and sharp, like a slap to the face, at our next awkward family meetup. Gloria, my future mother-in-law, didn't waste any time laying down the law. If you two are serious about getting married, we're getting a prenup signed, she declared, her eyes drilling into me as if daring me to object. I kept my cool, shrugged, and let out a low, fine by me. I'm not after your son's money. Alex looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. Once we were out of there, he was all apologies and promises. My mom won't get in our way, I promise. We'll be happy, he said, his eyes pleading for me to believe him. The wedding planning sailed smoothly enough, but the big day itself? That's when the storm hit. Lily, the sister-in-law-to-be, got sloshed beyond belief and decided it was showtime. In the middle of our reception, she staggered up, glass in hand, and slurred out accusations loud enough for the back row to hear. This one's a gold digger. Doesn't know the first thing about our kind of life. Illiterate, trying to snag my brother's cash. After that, there were other antics, molesting guests, and other things that are not customary to talk about in decent society. I felt my face flush hot with anger and humiliation. Without a second thought, I pulled out my phone and called the cops. This drama needed an audience, and I wasn't about to let Lily's performance go unchecked. The aftermath was a hurricane of accusations and threats. Gloria vowed revenge for the disgrace I'd brought upon their family. You've made a mockery of us. The press will have a field day with my daughter's antics, thanks to you. Alex was torn, trying to play peacemaker in a war that had no room for neutrality. I saw the strain in his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged under the weight of his family's drama and his desire to keep us afloat. But I stood my ground, my resolve hardening. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about drawing a line, about not letting wealth or the lack thereof dictate how I was treated. As the dust settled, and the night grew quiet, Alex and I sat amidst the wreckage of what was supposed to be our happiest day. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice heavy with unshed tears. "I never wanted any of this." I took his hand, feeling the rough edges of our new reality. "We'll get through this. But things need to change. Starting with setting boundaries with your family." The vow we made that night wasn't just about staying together. It was about fighting for the respect we deserved, about not letting old money or old grudges define our future. 2 years slipped by since we said "I do," and those vows felt heavier every day. Gloria practically vanished from our lives, and honestly, I didn't miss her one bit. But it wasn't just her absence that marked those years, it was Alex's changing attitude that really drove the wedge between us. He'd come home late, if at all, muttering excuses about work that didn't quite add up. The warmth we once shared cooled into courtesy, and then, even that faded. The tipping point came one night when he threw his jacket on the chair like it had personally offended him and said something I never thought I'd hear. "You know, I could have done better. Married someone with a bit more class, more in line with my circle." His words stung like a slap. I stood there, gobsmacked, wanting to scream, to tell him about the fortune that was mine. But Grandma's voice echoed in my head, advising patience, to see Alex for who he truly was. So, I swallowed the truth and the hurt, biting back tears. I thought maybe, just maybe, if we had a child, it might bridge the gap between us, remind him of the love that brought us together. "Alex, don't you think it's time we thought about having a baby? It could bring us closer," I ventured one evening, hoping to spark something of the man I fell in love with. His reaction was like a cold shower. "A baby? Now? Don't be ridiculous. We're not ready for that. Not by a long shot." That conversation shut me down. It wasn't just the refusal, it was the disdain, the way he made it clear that what I wanted, what I thought could save us, was nothing but a foolish fantasy. Days turned into weeks, and those weeks into months of silence, of living side by side but not together. Each rude remark, every late night, added another brick to the wall between us. I confided in Grandma, poured my heart out over cups of tea that had gone cold before I could finish them. "He's not the man I married, Grandma. I don't know if he ever was." She listened, her eyes sad but understanding. "You can't make someone be who you want them to be, darling. Sometimes, we see what we want to see, until we can't ignore the truth any longer." Her words, though heavy, carried a sliver of relief. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't asking for too much. I just wanted a partner, someone who saw me as an equal, who respected me. But as the days passed, it became clearer that wasn't who Alex was. Not anymore, if he ever had been. The idea of leaving crossed my mind more times than I cared to admit. But every time it did, I pushed it away, hoping against hope that something would change, that the man I loved would find his way back to me. The vibe was set for a killer party. I'd gone all out for Alex's birthday bash, hoping to bring back a spark into what had turned into a pretty mundane marriage. No expense was spared, and the guest list was a who's who of our closest pals. Notably missing from the invite list were Gloria and Lily, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Their drama was the last thing I needed ruining the night. Alex was in high spirits, soaking in the adoration and well wishes from everyone. For a moment, it felt like we were back in the honeymoon phase, all laughter and inside jokes. But that bubble burst the second Gloria and Lily crashed the party, uninvited but clearly expecting to be welcomed. Turns out, Alex had gone behind my back and invited them, hoping to avoid any family fallout. Their presence turned the atmosphere tense. Lily, in true form, made a beeline for the booze, dressed in an outfit that screamed "look at me," and not in a good way. Gloria's snide remarks flew under the radar, each one a veiled jab at me or our marriage. As the night wore on, Lily's antics escalated. Fueled by champagne and a need to be the center of attention, she started a rant about me not fitting into their family, how I was unworthy of their name. It was a mess, and Alex was nowhere to be found, too busy playing the good son to notice the circus unfolding. The climax of the evening was when Lily, a few sheets to the wind, decided to air out some dirty laundry. Waving around some documents, she slurred out insults, each word a knife. The spectacle ended with her stumbling into the pool, documents flying everywhere. I rushed over, more out of curiosity than concern, and gathered the scattered papers. My heart sank as I pieced together what they were. Divorce papers. Signed. By Alex. It was like a punch to the gut, each signature a betrayal. I stood there, numb, as the reality of the situation washed over me. My husband, the man I had vowed to spend my life with, had decided our journey was over without so much as a word to me. The party around me faded into a blur as I clutched the documents, Alex's signature glaring up at me, confirming what I didn't want to believe. This wasn't just a party to remember, it was the end of everything I thought we had. In the aftermath of the pool incident, I sought clarity amidst the chaos. My heart pounded as I approached Alex, holding the soaked documents that had unwittingly unveiled a truth I was unprepared for. "Alex, what's this about?" I demanded, my voice stronger than I felt, thrusting the divorce papers toward him. Before he could respond, his mother interjected with a smugness that made my skin crawl. "Oh, dear, looks like your little scheme didn't work out, did it? Alex is leaving you. Thought you could trap him with a baby for his money?" I stared at Alex, searching his eyes for any sign of the man I married. But he couldn't meet my gaze, his silence more telling than any words. With resignation, I signed the divorce papers. They were just a formality now, a closing chapter of a book I no longer wished to be part of. As the dust settled, Grandma approached, her presence a calming force. She didn't need to say anything, her eyes conveyed volumes of empathy, understanding, and an unspoken support that bolstered my resolve. It was then she decided to reveal the truth, not just to me, but to everyone present. "She doesn't need any of your money," Grandma declared, her voice steady and strong. "In a month, she turns 25 and will inherit a fortune far beyond what you could imagine. She's been raised to value people over wealth, to seek out genuine connections rather than financial gain." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Gloria's face morphed from smugness to shock, then to a desperate kind of greed, as she quickly began backpedaling, her apologies as transparent as they were insincere. Alex, too, seemed suddenly eager to rewrite the narrative, insisting his intentions were never to hurt me, that he was merely influenced by his mother. But it was too late. The veil had been lifted, revealing the stark reality of our relationship and the motivations behind it. I met their apologies with a quiet smile, not out of forgiveness, but out of an inner peace that came from understanding my worth, independent of the wealth that awaited me. "You've shown me your true colors," I said, my voice imbued with a newfound strength. "As for surprises, well, I've prepared another one for you." And at that moment, a loud honk echoed through the tension. Outside, a sleek, luxury car rolled up to the gate, the one I had secretly bought for Alex as a surprise. The irony wasn't lost on me. I couldn't help a bitter laugh as I excused myself, stepping outside to confront the final act of this drama. There it was, the epitome of luxury on four wheels, a symbol of the love I thought we shared, now just another piece in the game of pretense and betrayal. Without a second thought, I slid into the driver's seat, the leather cool and unyielding beneath me, much like my resolve. Grandma, ever my rock, joined me, her presence a silent testament to the strength and dignity that ran in our blood. Turning to face the house, I saw Alex and his mother at the door, their expressions a mix of confusion and awe. "Everything from now on goes through my lawyer," I called out to them, my voice clear and devoid of the warmth it once carried. "And don't worry about my stuff. I'll have a courier pick it up." Their faces, once smug and self-assured, now painted a picture of realization and loss. Not just of the wealth they coveted, but of the person they underestimated. With that, I turned the key, the car's engine purring to life, a sweet sound that promised freedom and new beginnings. Grandma and I shared a look, a silent agreement that this was the first step toward a future unburdened by deceit and manipulation. After the revelations and dramatic exits, the air seemed clearer, as if the truth had not only unveiled the greed and deceit but also cleansed the path ahead. It wasn't long before the first test of my newfound resolve came knocking, or rather, calling. The phone rang, its shrill tone slicing through the calm like a knife. On the other end was none other than Lily, her voice dripping with an unfamiliar sweetness. "Hey, I just wanted to, clear the air between us. We're practically the same age, right? We could be friends." I couldn't help but let out a short, disbelieving laugh. The contrast between this sugary tone and her usual disdain was stark. "Friends?" I echoed, the word feeling foreign. "You mean like how friends don't badmouth each other at parties or try to humiliate them in front of everyone?" There was a pause, a moment where I imagined I could hear the cogs turning in her head as she searched for a response. "Well, water under the bridge and all that," she attempted feebly. "Water into the pool, you mean?" I shot back, unable to resist the jab. The silence that followed was telling. It was clear that my refusal to play along had derailed her plans. "Fine, be that way," she snapped, her veneer of niceness crumbling away. "You'll regret this." I hung up, feeling a mix of amusement and sadness. It was a stark reminder of the facades people wear and the lengths they'll go to when faced with the consequences of their actions. The temptation to retaliate was there, a nagging thought in the back of my mind. I posted a video on social media of her falling into the pool. It went viral like wildfire. Within an hour, 1,000 people had liked it. My sister-in-law was internet famous. She tried to call me, demanding I take it down, but I just blocked her. I'm done with her fake sweetness and her nasty attitude. A week after that, my phone rang with a number I knew all too well. It was Gloria, her voice unnaturally sweet, offering an olive branch she hoped I'd grasp. "Let's put the past behind us. For Alex's sake, can't we reconcile?" she suggested, as if the wounds were mere scratches that could heal with a band-aid of words. "No, Gloria. That ship has sailed," I replied, firm but not unkind. There was no anger in my voice, just a resolute peace. "I wish Alex well, but our paths are diverging. I'm looking forward, not back." Not long after, Alex made his own attempts at a reunion. One morning, I found a bouquet of flowers at my doorstep, the card bearing a simple "I'm sorry, please come back" message. The sight of them sparked more anger than affection. Without a second thought, I tossed them into the trash. His efforts didn't stop there. He tried to visit, showing up unannounced with the hope of talking things through. But I wasn't the same person he left behind. His presence, once a source of comfort, now felt like an intrusion. One evening, as he made yet another uninvited appearance, I met him at the door, with a resolve as hard as steel. "If you don't stop this, I'm going to the police," I warned, my voice steady and firm. "Your apologies can't undo what's been done. It's over, Alex. Really over." The gravity of my words finally seemed to reach him. His shoulders slumped, and with a final, lingering look, he turned and walked away. That was the last I saw of him. In the time that followed, I threw myself into charity work. It became my passion, my purpose. Helping those truly in need, connecting with people who valued kindness over wealth, brought me a joy I hadn't known was missing. Living with Grandma, I found peace in our quiet routine. We'd sit and plan our next project, our next way to make a difference. It was during these moments I realized this was where I was meant to be. I had no illusions about the road ahead. It would be fraught with challenges, perhaps even heartache. But I also knew it would be filled with joy, with moments of unbridled happiness and the kind of love that enriches the soul. And so, I live my life looking forward, not back. I work, I help, and I hope. I believe in a future where I'll find true love, not defined by wealth or status, but by genuine connection. And yes, one day, I'll have those 3 beautiful children I dream of. But for now, I'm content. I'm building a life of purpose, surrounded by love that doesn't ask for anything in return. This isn't just the end of a chapter, it's the beginning of a whole new book. And I'm the one writing it.
The package looked harmless enough, just an ordinary cardboard box wrapped in brown paper. Yet, as I peeled away the layers to reveal a worn baby blanket, a strange odor wafted up, striking me with an eerie chill. This wasn't the comforting scent of lavender and age I associated with Nana's keepsakes. "Jessie, why does this blanket reek of death?" Emma's high-pitched voice shattered the silence, her innocent question slicing through me like a knife. I froze, the coarse fabric clutched in my trembling hands as Mark entered the living room, his face draining of color. "What are you talking about, Mom?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Wordlessly, I held up the blanket, letting the putrid smell speak for itself. Mark's eyes widened in recognition, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. "That's not from Nana," he murmured, his voice strained. "It's from my mother." Of course. Patricia's menacing specter loomed over us once again, her twisted games infiltrating our sanctuary. I should have known better than to open that cursed package without Mark by my side. Emma tugged at my sleeve, her hazel eyes round with worry. "Why would Grandma send us something smelly, Mommy? That's not very nice." "It's not about being nice, sweetie," I managed, forcing a reassuring smile for her sake. "Grandma just has a different way of doing things, that's all." Mark sank onto the couch, cradling his head in his hands. I longed to comfort him, but the chasm between us seemed to widen with each new torment Patricia inflicted. As I clutched the offending blanket, a memory resurfaced. That first fateful meeting with my mother-in-law, her icy gaze piercing through me like I was already a ghost. If only I'd heeded the warning signs then, perhaps we could have avoided this toxic entanglement. But it was too late for regrets. Patricia had snared us in her web, and there was no escaping the inescapable truth. Her malice knew no bounds, and we were merely pawns in her twisted game. The first time I met Patricia, she looked through me as if I were a ghost. Mark had warned me about her frosty demeanor, but nothing could have prepared me for the utter disdain etched onto her features. It was our engagement party, a joyous occasion meant to celebrate the union of 2 families. Yet the moment we stepped into Patricia's immaculate living room, the atmosphere shifted, a palpable chill descending upon us. "So, this is the girl who's ensnared my son?" Patricia drawled, her eyes raking over me with undisguised contempt. "I must admit, Mark, I expected someone more." Mark tensed beside me, his grip on my hand tightening. "Mom, please, this is supposed to be a happy day." Patricia arched a perfectly groomed brow. "Happy? For whom exactly? Certainly not for a mother watching her only child make the biggest mistake of his life." The words hung in the air like a noxious cloud, stealing my breath away. I opened my mouth to respond, but Mark beat me to it. "That's enough, Mother." His voice was low, edged with a rare hardness. "If you can't be civil, we'll leave." For a fleeting moment, Patricia's mask slipped, revealing a flash of something akin to panic, but it vanished just as quickly, replaced by her trademark sneer. "Oh, very well." She waved a dismissive hand. "I'll play the gracious hostess, if only to avoid another tedious scene." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced pleasantries and thinly veiled barbs. Patricia made no effort to hide her disdain, criticizing everything from my choice of attire to my family's wealth. "It must be nice, having Daddy's money to fall back on," she remarked at one point, her lips curled into a mocking smile. "Some of us had to work for a living, you know." I bit my tongue, determined not to rise to her bait, but with each cutting remark, I began to see the true depth of Patricia's animosity, and the lengths she would go to make my life a living hell. As we finally escaped into the cool night air, Mark pulled me into a fierce embrace. "I'm so sorry, Jess. I had no idea she'd be that vile." I forced a brave smile, even as the weight of Patricia's hatred settled heavily upon my shoulders. "It's okay. We knew she wouldn't make this easy." But deep down, a seed of doubt had taken root, whispering that this was only the beginning, and that Patricia's wrath would someday consume us all. In-laws can be challenging, but Patricia was something else entirely. No matter how hard I tried to extend an olive branch, she seemed determined to sever any chance of a healthy relationship. It was Mark's father, Robert, who finally suggested a solution, one that left a bitter taste in my mouth. "Just give her what she wants," he said during one of our rare coffee meetings, his voice hushed as if afraid Patricia might overhear. "A little financial incentive, and she'll come around." I stared at him, incredulous. "You want me to bribe your wife?" Robert shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "It's not a bribe, per se, just a gesture of goodwill from your family. Patricia's always felt insecure about not coming from money. So you're saying I should throw cash at her until she stops treating me like garbage?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them, acidic with years of pent-up frustration. Robert's face reddened, and for a moment, I thought he might actually stand up for himself, or for me. But then his shoulders slumped, defeat etched into every line of his weathered face. "Please, Jessie, just try it, for Mark's sake, if nothing else." I wanted to refuse, to tell Robert where he could shove his goodwill gesture. But then I pictured Mark's weary expression, the toll Patricia's hatred was taking on our once blissful marriage. Could a little bribery really be the answer? In the end, I agreed, if only to keep the peace. Patricia's demands started small at first, a new designer handbag here, a lavish spa weekend there, but it didn't take long for the requests to escalate, each one more outrageous than the last. "A little birdie told me your father's firm just landed a major contract," she purred during one of her unannounced visits, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the table. "Surely you could spare a few thousand for a much-needed kitchen renovation?" I bristled at the casual way she referenced my family's finances, as if we were an open well for her to draw from at will. But I kept my expression carefully neutral, unwilling to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. "Of course, Patricia, whatever you need." Her smile was saccharine, laced with the unmistakable tang of victory. "Excellent. I knew you'd see reason, dear." As she swept out of the house, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume in her wake, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that I'd just made a deal with the devil herself. And this was only the beginning. "You'll take Nana to her appointments now," Patricia announced one day, her tone leaving no room for argument. I stared at her, bewildered. "What? But I thought you had hired a nurse to take care of her needs." Patricia waved a dismissive hand. "That was only temporary. Nana prefers family, and you're not doing anything important these days anyway." The jab stung, but I bit my tongue. After years of tolerating Patricia's barbs, I had grown adept at swallowing my pride. "Of course," I forced myself to say, "whatever Nana needs." And so it began, a relentless cycle of doctor visits, physical therapy sessions, and endless spent tending to Mark's ailing grandmother. Nana was a sweet woman, but her care was exhausting, especially with a rambunctious 6-year-old and a newborn baby at home. Still, I soldiered on, determined to prove my worth to Patricia, even as she piled on more and more demands. "The nursing home isn't cutting it anymore," she declared one afternoon, sweeping into my living room uninvited. "Nana needs to move in with us until she's back on her feet." I stared at her, aghast. "But we don't have room for her here. And what about the round-the-clock care she needs?" Patricia fixed me with a withering look. "Well, you'll just have to make room, won't you? Unless, of course, you'd prefer to put her in one of those dreadful state-run facilities." The implication hung in the air, heavy and damning. I knew what Patricia was really saying. If I refused, I would be the one responsible for Nana's suffering. So, like always, I acquiesced, rearranging our entire lives to accommodate Nana's needs. The once peaceful sanctuary of our home was transformed into a makeshift hospital, with medical equipment and the ever-present scent of antiseptic. Through it all, Patricia watched with a critical eye, finding fault in every aspect of Nana's care. "You're not doing the exercises properly," she would snap, shoving me aside to demonstrate the correct technique. "No wonder she's not improving." Or, "Did you even bother to check her vitals this morning? You're lucky she's still alive with your level of incompetence." The insults cut deep, but I couldn't bring myself to retaliate, not when Nana's well-being was at stake. So I simply gritted my teeth and carried on, pouring every ounce of my energy into ensuring Nana wanted for nothing. until one day when the strain of it all finally became too much to bear. "Mommy, the baby in your tummy told me he's scared." Emma's words froze me in my tracks. My hand instinctively went to my still flat stomach as dread washed over me. "What did you say, honey?" Emma blinked up at me with those unnervingly perceptive eyes of hers. "The baby. He says he doesn't want to come out yet because Grandma Patricia is being mean." My heart stuttered in my chest. How could she possibly know? Mark and I hadn't even confirmed the pregnancy yet. "Emma, sweetie, what are you talking about?" I forced a casual laugh, even as my mind raced. "There's no baby in Mommy's tummy." But even as the words left my lips, I knew it was a lie. The queasiness, the fatigue, the subtle shifts in my body, all the signs had been there, staring me in the face. I had just been too preoccupied with appeasing Patricia to acknowledge them. Emma frowned, her little brow furrowing. "But I heard him, Mommy. He's scared of Grandma." A lump formed in my throat. Of course the baby would be afraid. He could likely sense the tension, the constant strain that had become our daily reality, thanks to Patricia's toxicity. That evening, after putting Emma to bed, I forced myself to take the test. As the twin pink lines appeared, a mixture of joy and trepidation washed over me. A new life, a precious gift, and another pawn in Patricia's twisted games. The doctor's stark words only confirmed my fears. "You'll need to take it easy over the next few months," she cautioned. "This pregnancy is considered high risk due to your age and the stress factors." I nodded numbly, already imagining Patricia's snide remarks about my geriatric condition. As if I didn't have enough on my plate caring for Nana and managing her ever-escalating demands. Sure enough, when I finally broke the news, Patricia's reaction was everything I had dreaded, and more. "Another mouth to feed?" She clucked her tongue disapprovingly. "I should have known you'd find a way to burden us further." The words were like a physical blow, stealing my breath. But before I could muster a response, she was already sweeping towards the door, tossing one final barb over her shoulder. "Well, I certainly hope you're not expecting a handout from me. You've drained enough resources as it is." I watched her go, my fists clenched at my sides, as a wave of impotent rage washed over me. In that moment, I knew something had to give, because if I didn't find a way to escape Patricia's toxic orbit, this baby wouldn't be the only one in danger. "Mommy, Patricia took Nana's special necklace. I saw her." Emma's words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, willing myself to remain calm even as my heart raced. "What do you mean, sweetie? Are you sure about this?" Emma nodded solemnly. "I saw her take it from Nana's room when she thought no one was looking." A sickening realization dawned on me. Of course, the vintage emerald pendant Nana had treasured for decades, passed down through generations. She had intended to leave it to me as the only daughter-in-law. But not if Patricia had her way. Gritting my teeth, I forced a reassuring smile for Emma's sake. "It's okay, honey. Why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Mommy needs to make a call." Once Emma was out of earshot, I dialed Mark's number with shaking fingers. He had to know what his mother was up to. The woman had truly stooped to a new low. Mark's voice was laced with concern when he answered. "Jess, what's wrong? Is it the baby?" "No, it's your mother." The words tumbled out in a rush. Emma saw her take Nana's necklace from her room. There was a heavy silence, then a weary sigh. "Are you sure Emma saw correctly? You know how kids can misinterpret things. She was adamant, Mark. And when have you ever known Emma to lie?" I fought to keep my voice steady. "Your mother has been angling for that necklace for years. We both know it." Another pause, then. "All right, let me talk to her. We'll get to the bottom of this." But even as I waited for Mark to return from confronting his mother, I knew deep down that it was futile. Patricia's web of lies and manipulation had only grown thicker over the years, ensnaring us all. Sure enough, when Mark finally emerged, his expression was grim. "She denied everything, of course, and she's threatening to sue us for defamation if we pursue this any further." White-hot rage coursed through me. She can't just get away with this. That necklace was meant for our family. Mark held up a placating hand. I know, but we can't accuse her without proof, Jess. You know how crafty she can be." That's when it hit me, the security camera my neighbor had recently installed with a perfect view of Nana's bedroom window. If Patricia had swiped that necklace, there would be footage. Mark must have seen the resolve in my eyes because he shook his head vehemently. No, Jess. Don't even think about it. You know how vindictive she can be if she feels backed into a corner. But I was already moving, propelled by a newfound sense of determination. Enough was enough. It was time to strip away Patricia's carefully constructed facade once and for all, no matter the cost. How could you, Mom? You have no idea what you've unleashed. Mark's words sliced through the tense silence, his voice trembling with a rare fury. We stood in the lawyer's office, the damning evidence of Patricia's misdeeds laid bare before us. The security footage had been merely the tip of the iceberg. Once we started digging, a trail of deceit and embezzlement had unraveled, implicating Patricia in a tangled web of financial crimes spanning decades. Letters and documents bombarded us from all sides, demands for repayment, legal threats, even whispers of criminal charges. All this time, while we had been bowing to her every whim, Patricia had been systematically draining Nana's estate, lining her own pockets without a shred of remorse. And now, finally confronted with the truth, she had nowhere left to hide. Patricia lifted her chin defiantly, her icy gaze sweeping over us with undisguised contempt. Don't act so righteous, Mark. You're just as complicit in all of this. Mark recoiled as if struck. What are you talking about? I had no idea. Oh, please. Patricia's lip curled into a sneer. You think I could have pulled off this level of theft without your help? All those favors I asked for over the years, the endless financial bleeding, you enabled every bit of it. Her words hung heavy in the air, poisonous barbs aimed straight at my husband's heart. To my horror, Mark's shoulders slumped, his eyes clouding with shame. I didn't realize, he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I just wanted to keep the peace, to make you happy. A bitter laugh erupted from Patricia's throat, harsh and mocking. Happy? Is that what you think this was about? She shook her head slowly, almost pityingly. You're more of a fool than I ever gave you credit for, son. With a sinking feeling, I realized the true depths of her depravity. This had never been about money or status or any of the shallow trappings she had used to justify her cruelty. No, this was about raw, unbridled malice, an insatiable hunger to demean and destroy anyone who dared cross her path, including her own flesh and blood. You're a monster, I spat, the words ripped from my very soul. How could you do this to your own family? For the briefest of moments, something flickered in Patricia's eyes, a glimmer of vulnerability, a fleeting glimpse of the wounded creature lurking beneath that steely exterior. But then it was gone, swallowed up by the vast, yawning chasm of her hatred. Family? She scoffed. You have no idea what that word even means. With a dismissive flick of her wrist, she turned on her heel and strode towards the door, leaving a deafening silence in her wake. We could do nothing but watch, stunned into immobility, as the true architect of our suffering slipped through our fingers once more. But this time, something had shifted. A line had been crossed, irrevocably severing whatever twisted bonds still tethered us to this vile woman. As the weight of her betrayal threatened to crush us, a new resolve took root. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Patricia's health declined rapidly after her secrets did. It was as if her body, having harbored so much darkness for so long, could no longer contain the poison she had allowed to fester. At first, the changes were subtle, a persistent cough, a gaunt pallor, the occasional tremor in her hands. But soon, they became impossible to ignore or dismiss as mere side effects of aging. She's not well, Mark confided in me one evening, his voice heavy with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Concern? Regret? The doctors can't seem to find a cause. I said nothing, watching the flicker of flames in the fireplace as an uneasy silence stretched between us. A part of me, the wounded, vengeful part that Patricia had nurtured through years of torment, felt a grim sense of satisfaction at her deterioration. This was justice, was it not? A fitting punishment for her litany of sins? And yet, another part of me recoiled from such thoughts, sickened by the realization that I had allowed this woman's toxic influence to seep into the very core of my being. Do you think? Mark began, then trailed off, seemingly unable to voice the notion that had taken root in both our minds. That Patricia's affliction was not purely physical, but a manifestation of something deeper. A sickness of the soul, wrought by her own hand. In the weeks that followed, Patricia's condition only worsened, each day stripping away another layer of her former self. The haughty, immaculate woman who had once struck terror into our hearts grew frail and disheveled, her piercing gaze dulled by a perpetual fog of confusion. It should have been a victory, seeing the once formidable matriarch laid so low. But as word of her deterioration spread through the community like wildfire, a disturbing shift took place. The tongues that had once whispered in fearful reverence of Patricia now wagged with open disdain, reveling in her downfall with undisguised glee. Everywhere we went, the stares and snide remarks followed, a silent chorus of schadenfreude that chilled me to the bone. Had our small town always harbored such cruelty, such pettiness, lurking just beneath the surface? Or had Patricia's brand of toxic malice simply given them permission to unleash their own baser natures? Either way, the effect on Mark was devastating. His already fragile relationship with his mother, fractured beyond repair by her betrayal, now hung by a gossamer thread. Each new humiliation, each barbed comment seemed to chip away at what little remained of his connection to the woman who had given him life. Until finally, on a crisp autumn evening, the last thread snapped. "We have to go," he said abruptly, startling me from my reverie by the fire. "Get the kids ready. We're leaving town for a while." I opened my mouth to protest, but the look in his eyes stopped me cold. There was a hunted quality to them that I had never seen before, a desperation born of too many wounds, too much suffering. So I did as he asked, gathering our meager belongings and bundling Emma and Jamie into the car without a word. And as we pulled away from the house that had once been our sanctuary, leaving Patricia and all her toxic legacy behind, a profound sense of peace washed over me. It was over. The cycle was broken, the tendrils of her hatred no longer able to reach us. Or so I thought.